The Sunday morning sun streamed through the high windows of the main church of St. John's Valley, like golden blades cutting through the gloom of the altar. The smell of incense, mixed with the heavy scent of white flowers adorning the pews, still permeated the air as the faithful began to leave the 10 o'clock service, talking quietly, greeting each other with respectful nods. It was October 12th, 1947, and the entire town seemed to be there that morning. As always happened on Sundays, the women in their Sunday dresses, the men in worn but clean suits, the restless children pulling at their mother's skirts. Mary was standing in the last row of pews, her hands crossed over her round 7-month belly, feeling the baby move inside her as he always did after she stood still for a long time. She was 19 years old, but her face already carried that tired expression of someone who had known hard work since she was a girl. Her black hair was tied in a simple bun, and the light blue cotton dress, the only one that still fit her, was clean but patched in 2 places. She waited for everyone to leave first. She always did. Poor people like her knew how to wait. Her father, Joseph Bennett, had worked as a tenant farmer on Colonel James Pratt's land for over 20 years. That meant they lived in a small cabin at the back of the St. Teresa Ranch, planted a small patch to eat, and in exchange, her father dedicated his days to the colonel, tending cattle, fixing fences, doing whatever was needed. Mary had helped in the big house since she was 12, washing clothes, cleaning, serving meals. She knew every room in that huge manor like she knew the palms of her own hands. The baby she carried in her belly was the son of a young man from another town, a traveler who passed through there 6 months earlier selling horses. He promised to return to marry her. He never came back. Her father wanted to kill her when he found out, then cried like a child, then simply stopped looking at her for weeks. Her mother, Mrs. Grace, prayed every day, asking for mercy. The colonel allowed her to continue working in the big house out of pity. But the mistress, Mrs. Evelyn, barely disguised her disgust every time Mary passed by. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you don't miss any emotional stories that will touch your heart. Mary finally left the church when the last group of people was already on the stone steps outside. The sun hit her face hard, and she had to squint. The main square was full, as it always was after Sunday service. People gathered there to talk, men smoking their cigarettes, women exchanging recipes and gossip, children running among the ancient oak trees that provided shade. On the other side of the square was the white gazebo where the band played at parties, and right there was Mr. Marcus's shop, which on Sundays sold fresh juice and warm bread. It was when she was descending the church steps, holding firmly to the iron railing because her heavy belly threw off her balance, that she heard the screams. "Thief! Wretched thief!" Mary looked up and saw the young Mistress Beatrice, the colonel's eldest daughter, coming towards her. Her face red with anger. Behind her came 2 friends and her new husband, Dr. Henry, whom she had married just 3 weeks ago in a party that lasted 3 whole days and cost enough money to feed 10 families for a year. Beatrice was beautiful, 22 years old, with curly brown hair, always very well styled, and wore expensive dresses that came from the big city. She also had her father's violent temper and her mother's sharp tongue. "Are you talking to me, miss?" Mary asked softly, still on the step, feeling her heart race inside her chest. "Don't play the fool with me, Mary." Beatrice climbed the steps, coming face to face with her. The expensive perfume she wore was so strong it was nauseating. "My gold necklace, the necklace my father gave me as a wedding present. It disappeared from my dresser on Friday, and the only person who entered my room that day was you when you went to make the beds." People in the square began to approach, forming a circle. Mary felt all those dozens of eyes glued to her, judging, condemning before even hearing her defense. Her face grew hot. Her hands began to tremble. "I didn't take anything, miss. I swear to God. I just made the beds and cleaned the floor, like I always do." "Liar!" Beatrice shoved her shoulder, making Mary stumble. "You stole it because you're poor. Because you're expecting this bastard child. Because you wanted to sell it to buy who knows what. My father trusted your family for years, and is this how you repay us?" "I didn't steal, I swear." Tears began to roll down Mary's face. "I would never take anything that wasn't mine." But Beatrice wasn't listening anymore. She made a gesture, and two of the colonel's henchmen who were nearby came quickly. They were big, brutal men who did the dirty work on the ranch. One of them grabbed Mary by the arm, squeezing too hard, while the other ripped the shawl covering her shoulders. "Search her," Beatrice ordered, her voice full of poison. "She must have hidden it somewhere." The people in the square did nothing. Some turned their faces away, ashamed, but no one dared to question. When it came to Colonel Pratt and his family, silence was the only protection the townspeople had. Mary was shaken, searched right there in front of everyone, the rough hands of the henchmen patting her pockets, her waist, while she cried and begged them to stop. "She doesn't have anything on her, miss," one of the henchmen finally said. "Then she already sold it or hid it." Beatrice was possessed now, her face deformed by fury. "My father will know about this. This family will pay." It was at that moment that Colonel James Pratt appeared in the square, mounted on his bay horse, accompanied by 3 more men. He was 58 years old, with a well-trimmed gray mustache, hard eyes that never showed kindness. He wore a black suit even in the heat, a felt hat, and leather boots that shone. Everyone in the square fell silent when he dismounted with a slow, calculated movement. "What is happening here?" His voice was deep, controlled, but charged with absolute authority. "Father, this tramp stole my gold necklace." "The necklace you gave me!" Beatrice ran to him, dramatic, as if she were about to faint. "She went into my room Friday and took it. I know it was her." The colonel looked at Mary as if looking at an insect. She stood there, trembling, her hands instinctively protecting her belly, tears flowing endlessly. Her eyes met his for a second, and she saw something there that terrified her more than any scream. Complete indifference. "I didn't take anything, Colonel, sir," she managed to say, her voice coming out weak, broken. "I swear on my mother, on my grandfather's memory, I didn't touch that necklace." "Do you have proof that you didn't take it?" he asked, his voice dangerously calm. I just know I didn't take it, Colonel. I've never stolen anything in my life. And my daughter is certain that you were the only one who entered her room." He took 2 steps toward Mary, and she felt the urge to run, but her legs wouldn't obey. "Do you know what we do with thieves here in St. John's Valley?" Mary swallowed hard. She knew. Everyone knew. She had seen it 3 years ago when a man was accused of stealing chickens from the colonel. He was beaten so badly in the square that he was bedridden for 2 weeks and lost the sight in one eye. She had seen it 2 years ago when a woman was caught taking corn from the ranch's storage. They cut all her hair off in front of everyone, and she had to leave town out of shame. "Please, Colonel, I'm pregnant, my child." Mary clasped her hands, pleading. "I didn't do anything. Look properly in the house. The necklace must have fallen somewhere. It must be there." "We already looked," Beatrice spat the words. "It's nowhere. You took it." The colonel turned to the crowd, watching everything in silence. "Look closely," he said, raising his voice so everyone could hear. "This is the gratitude we receive when we open our houses to these people. We give work, we give a roof, we give food, and they steal from us. They steal and lie shamelessly, even using a pregnant belly as a shield. There were murmurs in the crowd. Some people nodded in agreement. Others looked at the ground. Mary saw her mother, Mrs. Grace, in the middle of the people, hands over her mouth, crying silently. She saw her father, Joseph, being held back by two men so he wouldn't approach. She needs to be punished, Beatrice said, her voice cold now. She needs to be an example, and she will be. The colonel made a gesture, and the henchman grabbed Mary again, one by each arm. Take her to the post. No! Mary's scream echoed through the entire square, scaring the birds in the trees. No, please, my son is going to be born, please. But they dragged her anyway, her feet barely touching the dirt ground, leaving trails as they pulled her through the square. People moved away, opening a path, turning their faces, pretending not to see. Some older women made the sign of the cross. Men lit cigarettes with nervous hands. No one said anything. The whipping post stood in the center of the square, a remnant of even more brutal times, but which the colonel kept there for exactly this, to remind everyone who was in charge. Mary was pushed to her knees in front of it, her huge belly pressing against her legs, making breathing difficult. One of the henchmen tied her hands behind her back with a thick rope that scratched her skin. Someone has to teach these people respect, the colonel said, taking the belt from his trousers slowly, the leather making a hissing sound. Someone has to show what happens when you steal from the Pratts. Mary closed her eyes tight, praying softly, asking God to protect her son, for it to end quickly, that she wouldn't faint. She felt the first lash, like a bolt of fire crossing her back over the thin cotton dress. The scream that came out of her was almost animal, pure suffering. The second came right after, then the third. Stop it! Her mother's voice cut the air. Mrs. Grace tried to approach, but was held back by two women. She's pregnant! You're going to kill the child! You should have thought of that before raising a fief, Mrs. Evelyn, the colonel's wife, said from atop her carriage, watching everything with an expression of satisfaction. It was on the fourth lash that Mary felt something different, a sharp, deep pain coming from inside her belly. She gasped, her whole body going rigid. No, it couldn't be. It was too early. There were almost 2 months left. She's bleeding! A woman in the crowd screamed, pointing. Mary looked down and saw the red stains starting to appear on her dress, running down her legs. Panic took over her. Her son, her baby, the only pure and good thing she had in the world. She tried to break free from the ropes, tried to stand up, but the henchman pushed her back to the ground with force. My son, she screamed, her voice torn. My son is dying. The colonel stopped with the belt in the air, looking at the bloodstain with an expression that wasn't quite remorse, but something close to annoyance. He didn't want a dead baby on his conscience, not in front of the church, not on a Sunday. That would cause too much talk. Let her go, he said finally, putting the belt away. Mary fell sideways on the ground when they cut the ropes, her free hands going immediately to her belly, feeling the baby who moved no more, feeling the warm blood flowing down. Everything was spinning. The clear blue sky above her seemed to darken at the edges. Voices shouting in the distance, running footsteps. Her mother's hands finally reaching her, holding her face. Help! Someone help my daughter! Mrs. Grace was crying, her voice desperate, but no one moved. Everyone looked on, horrified, fascinated, paralyzed between fear of the colonel and their own humanity. It was then that the sound of an old wagon arriving fast in the square made all heads turn. Anthony Silvers pulled the reins hard, making his mare stop suddenly, kicking up dust. He was 43 years old, his face marked by the sun, calloused hands of someone who worked the land. Black hair starting to turn gray at the temples. He wore simple work trousers, a white shirt with rolled-up sleeves, a worn hat. He was returning from the market in the neighboring town, the back of the wagon full of sacks of supplies, when he saw the commotion in the square. He got down from the wagon in a quick movement and saw the scene. A pregnant woman on the ground, bleeding, tied up seconds ago. The colonel standing there with the belt in his hand. People all around watching, no one doing anything. Something inside him broke. Anthony had lost his wife Joanna 3 years ago. She died of a hemorrhage in childbirth after 20 hours of labor. And the baby, a boy they were going to call Peter, was born dead, purple, the umbilical cord wrapped around his neck. He still dreamed about it. Still woke up in the middle of the night hearing her screams, asking for help that didn't arrive in time. He still felt the weight of the cold baby in his arms. And now he was seeing it happen again. In front of him. In front of everyone. And no one did anything. Stop! His scream crossed the entire square like thunder. All heads turned. The colonel looked at him with surprise and then with irritation. Who was that man to scream like that? To dare give an order? Anthony walked quickly to where Mary lay on the ground, Mrs. Grace holding her head. He knelt beside them, seeing the blood, seeing the girl's pale face, her eyes half closed, in shock. "She needs a doctor now," he said, looking around at the silent crowd. "Someone go get Dr. Augustus." No one moved. "I said for someone to get the doctor," Anthony yelled again, and finally a boy ran off in the direction of the doctor's house. "Who are you to give orders here?" The colonel's voice came cold, dangerous. Anthony stood up, turning to face him. Was he afraid? He was. The colonel could end his life with a snap of his fingers. He could take his farm, burn his house, make him disappear. Everyone knew that. But in that moment, looking at that man in the black suit, belt in hand, from atop his horse of superiority, Anthony Silvers felt something greater than fear. He felt rage. "I am a man who won't stay quiet, watching a pregnant woman be beaten until she bleeds in front of a church," he said, his voice firm. "I am a man who knows that what you did is cowardice and not justice." The silence that fell over the square was so deep, one could hear the wind in the leaves of the trees. No one, absolutely no one, spoke like that to Colonel James Pratt. Mrs. Evelyn stood up in the carriage, open-mouthed. Beatrice took a step back, incredulous. The henchmen placed their hands on the grips of their guns. The colonel dismounted slowly, eyes fixed on Anthony, approaching him with measured steps. They stood face to face, the colonel a few inches taller, better dressed, richer, more powerful in every possible sense. "Do you know who I am?" the colonel asked quietly, but the threat was clear. "I do." Anthony didn't look away. "And do you know that what you did here today will mark your soul for the rest of your life? That God is watching? That this girl could lose her child because of you? From which city are you watching this story? Leave it in the comments." For a moment, just for a moment, something passed through the colonel's eyes. Maybe it was doubt. Maybe it was the weight of his own conscience. But it passed quickly. "Take her away from here," he said finally, turning his back to Anthony. "And you, Silvers, never disrespect me like this again. Next time, I will have no mercy." Anthony didn't answer. He bent down again, passing his arms under Mary carefully so as not to hurt her more, lifting her from the ground. She was light despite the belly, too light, as if suffering had consumed all her substance. Her head lolled to the side, eyes half open but unfocused, "Hold on, miss," he whispered while walking toward his wagon. "Hold on a little longer. I'm taking you to the doctor." Mrs. Grace came running behind, climbing into the wagon, holding her daughter's hand. Joseph also tried to come, but the henchman held him, pushing him back. The message was clear. Her family still belonged to the colonel. Anthony placed Mary lying in the back of the wagon on the sacks of supplies, took off his own shirt and placed it under her head as a pillow. The blood had already soaked her entire dress, forming a pool. He took one of the cloths that was there and pressed it against her legs, trying to stop the bleeding. "It's going to be okay," Mrs. Grace repeated, holding her daughter's face, kissing her forehead. "It's going to be okay, my daughter. It's going to be okay." But Mary didn't answer anymore. Her eyes were closed now, her face white as wax, her lips purple. The baby inside her didn't move. And as Anthony climbed into the front of the wagon, took the reins, and whipped the mare to run as fast as possible through the dirt streets of St. John's Valley, he prayed softly, asking God not to let that happen again, not to take one more mother and one more child from the world, to do something, anything. Behind them, in the square, people began to disperse slowly, in silence, carrying the weight of what they had seen and their own cowardice. The colonel mounted his horse and left without looking back. But his daughter Beatrice stayed there, standing for a while longer, looking at the bloodstain on the dirt floor of the square, with an expression on her face that no one could quite decipher. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was just discomfort. Maybe it was the beginning of something she didn't yet understand. But that would rot inside her in the coming days, like fruit forgotten in the sun. And somewhere in the big house of the St. Teresa Ranch, inside a locked cedar chest in Beatrice's room, hidden under layers of silk dresses and embroidered sheets, was the gold necklace she swore had been stolen, along with 3 perfumed letters written in masculine handwriting. Letters that spoke of forbidden love, secret meetings, promises that could never be kept. Letters that, if discovered, would destroy not only a newly started marriage, but the entire reputation the Pratt family had built over decades. But this, no one knew yet, and the truth, as always happens, was just waiting for the right moment to surface. Anthony's wagon kicked up dry dust through the narrow streets of the town, the mare galloping with everything she had while he held the reins tightly, knuckles white. Mrs. Grace was in the back, kneeling beside her daughter, holding that blood-soaked cloth against Mary's legs, praying aloud, her voice breaking. The midday sun beat down strong, relentless, and the smell of iron from the blood mixed with sweat and fear formed an odor that stuck in the throat. Mary opened her eyes for a second, just a second, and looked at the blue sky above her, so beautiful, so indifferent to suffering. She tried to speak, but couldn't. She felt only her mother's hand squeezing hers, warm, desperate, and then everything went dark again. Dr. Augustus's house was on the main street, a 2-story building painted white, an office on the bottom floor, and the residence above. Anthony pulled the reins with such force that the mare almost reared on her hind legs, stopping right in front of the gate. He jumped from the wagon and began to shout, "Dr. Augustus! Doctor!" "It's urgent." The door opened, and the doctor appeared, still putting on his jacket, a man of about 60, completely white hair, round glasses on a thin face. He had been a doctor in the big city before moving to the countryside to have a calmer life. But calm was something he rarely found when being the only doctor for an entire town. He saw Mary lying in the wagon, her dress soaked in blood, and needed no further explanations. "Bring her inside, quickly!" Anthony carried her again, climbing the steps of the entrance, passing through the waiting room, where two women waited with their sick children and looked horrified at the scene. The doctor opened the office door, indicating the stretcher in the center of the room. Anthony laid Mary there with all the care in the world, as if she were made of glass, as if a sudden movement could break her completely. "What happened?" the doctor asked while already examining her, lifting her eyelids to see the pupils, placing fingers on her wrist to feel the weak heartbeat. "The Colonel," Anthony said simply, and that was explanation enough. Dr. Augustus closed his eyes for a second, a muscle tensing in his jaw, but said nothing. He had seen too many things in his years of medicine, too many things caused by human cruelty, and had learned that commenting on the powerful only brought trouble. He cut Mary's dress with scissors, exposing the large belly and the back marked by red welts where the belt had struck. Mrs. Grace let out a whimper upon seeing that. "She is bleeding a lot," the doctor said, his voice professional now, without emotion, because emotion hindered the work. "The baby went into distress. I will do what is possible, but..." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Everyone there knew that doing what is possible meant the chances were small. Very small. "Leave," he said to Anthony. "Only the mother can stay." Anthony went out to the hallway, closing the door behind him. His hands were trembling now that the adrenaline was starting to fade. He looked at them, saw Mary's blood there, drying under his nails, in the lines of his palms. His heart beat out of rhythm in his chest. He leaned against the wall and slid down to sit on the floor, head in his hands. Why had he done that? Why had he shouted? Why had he gotten involved? He didn't know that girl. He had never spoken to her before. She was just another tenant of the Colonel, just one among dozens. And now he had made an enemy of the most powerful man in the region. A man who could end his life, take his farm, destroy everything he had. But when he closed his eyes, he saw Joanna. He saw his wife lying on that same stretcher 3 years ago, bleeding the same way, face pale the same way, slipping into death while he stood outside, powerless, unable to do anything. Dr. Augustus had done what was possible that day too. It hadn't been enough. He heard screams coming from the office. Mary's voice, finally awake, screaming in pain. Mrs. Grace's voice, trying to calm her. The doctor's firm voice, giving instructions. Anthony squeezed his eyes shut tight, hands covering his ears. But it was no use. The sounds passed through everything. 2 hours passed. 2 hours that seemed like 2 eternities. The women in the waiting room had already left, frightened, taking their children. The boy who helped the doctor, a scrawny lad of about 15 named Zach, went in and out of the office several times, carrying basins with bloody water, soaked towels, and every time the door opened, Anthony caught a glimpse of Mary lying there, her small body seeming even smaller on that large stretcher, and Mrs. Grace holding her hand, praying, always praying. When the silence finally came, it was worse than the screams. A heavy, dense silence that filled every corner of that hallway. Anthony stood up slowly, legs numb from sitting on the floor for so long. The office door opened, and Dr. Augustus came out, taking off his glasses to clean them, avoiding looking directly into Anthony's eyes. "The baby?" Anthony asked, already knowing the answer. "Didn't make it," the doctor said softly. "It was a boy, born dead. The cord had detached because of the trauma. He didn't have a chance." Anthony closed his eyes. Of course he didn't. Because babies don't survive when their mothers are beaten in front of churches. Because the justice of powerful men kills the innocent. Because God, if he existed, was too busy to pay attention to St. John's Valley that Sunday. And the girl, she will survive. Lost a lot of blood, but I managed to stop it. She is young, strong. She will recover. The doctor put his glasses back on, finally looking at Anthony. Physically, at least. The rest will take time. Can I see her? You can. But she is sedated now. She won't wake up anytime soon. Anthony entered the office. The smell was strong inside. Disinfectant, mixed with blood, mixed with something sweet and sickly he couldn't identify. Mary was lying on the stretcher, covered up to her chest with a clean white sheet. Her face still pale, but no longer that cadaverous white from before. Her black hair was spread on the pillow, wet with sweat. She looked like a sleeping child, so small, so fragile. Mrs. Grace was sitting in a chair beside her, holding her daughter's hand, eyes red and swollen from crying. She looked at Anthony and tried to smile, but couldn't. She only managed to form the words with difficulty. "Thank you," she said, voice hoarse. "If it weren't for you." "Don't thank me, Mrs. Grace." Anthony approached, standing on the other side of the stretcher. "I only did what anyone should have done." "But no one did. Only you." She squeezed her daughter's hand. "My grandson, my little grandson." She couldn't continue. She began to cry again, silently, her whole body shaking. Anthony didn't know what to say. There were no words for that. There was no comfort that made sense. So he just stood there, witnessing that pain like one witnesses a storm, knowing it will pass, but that it will leave destruction in its path. If you are moved by this story, leave a like now. Dr. Augustus came in again, bringing a cup of hot tea for Mrs. Grace. "You need to rest too," he said gently. "You can use the room upstairs if you want to sleep a little. I'll keep an eye on her." "No," Mrs. Grace said immediately, shaking her head. "I won't leave my daughter alone. I won't." "I'll stay with her," Anthony heard himself saying, surprising himself. "I'll stay here all night if needed. You go upstairs, drink this tea, rest a little. When she wakes up, you need to be well to take care of her." Mrs. Grace looked at him with those tired eyes, evaluating, trying to understand why that man she barely knew was doing all that. But she was too tired to question kindness. She nodded slowly, stood up with difficulty, legs wobbly, and followed the doctor out of the office. Anthony pulled up the chair and sat, looking at Mary. Her breathing was calm now, regular, chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. He found himself looking at her fingers, thin, calloused from work, nails short and clean. Hands that had never stolen anything. He was sure of that, in the same way he was sure the sun would rise tomorrow. Night fell. Zach lit the lamps in the office, yellow light dancing on the walls. He brought a glass of water for Anthony, a piece of bread with butter. Anthony ate without tasting, just to have something in his stomach. Outside, the town became silent, people retreating to their homes, closing their doors and windows, turning off their lights. Night fell completely, dark, and with it came the cold from the hills, entering through the cracks. It was almost midnight when Mary finally stirred. A low moan, then another. Anthony leaned forward, seeing her eyes open slowly, unfocused, trying to understand where she was. She looked at the ceiling, at the lamps, at the white walls, and for a moment seemed confused. Then memory returned. He saw it happen on her face. Recognition, pain, horror. Her hands went immediately to her belly. The belly that was still there, but different now. Empty, deflated. She patted, fingers searching. searching for something that was no longer there. "My son," she whispered, voice breaking. "My son, where—" "I'm sorry," Anthony said softly. He didn't make it." The scream that came out of Mary was soul-tearing. A scream that came from a place so deep, it seemed impossible a human body could produce that sound. She tried to get up, but her body wouldn't obey. Too weak, too sore. So she just lay there, screaming, crying, hands gripping the white sheet, until her knuckles turned white. Anthony didn't know what to do. He reached out, hesitant, and touched her shoulder gently. "Miss, I know there's nothing I can say to make this better, but you survived. You are still here." "I don't want to be here," she screamed, turning her face to him, eyes bloodshot, face deformed by pain. "I want my son. I want my baby. They killed my son." "I know. You don't know anything." She was trembling now, her whole body shaking. "You don't know what it's like to carry a life inside you for 7 months, feel him grow, feel him move, talk to him every night, promise you would take care of him, that you would love him, that it wouldn't matter what others said, that he would be happy, and then, she couldn't finish. She turned her face to the other side, to the wall, and continued crying, but now it was a different cry, deeper, more broken. It was the cry of someone who lost not just a son, but an entire future. All the promises, all the dreams, everything. Anthony sat there, feeling completely useless, wishing he could do something, anything. He knew that pain. He had lived it. He knew there was no comfort, no magic word that would make it better. There was only time, and time wasn't always enough. The door opened, and Mrs. Grace came running in, still in her robe, hair loose, having heard the screams. She went straight to her daughter, hugging her, kissing her face, murmuring meaningless words that mothers murmur when there is nothing left to say. Mary clung to her like a child, her face buried in her mother's neck, and they stayed like that, cradled in their own pain, until the crying turned into sobs, and the sobs into sighs, and the sighs into silence. Anthony left the office, giving them space. He went outside to the front porch of the doctor's house, where the night air was cold and clean. He lit a cigarette, something he hadn't done in months, and stood there, looking at the stars, thinking about how unfair the world was, how good people suffered while bad people slept peacefully in their soft beds. Dr. Augustus came to join him after a while, bringing 2 cups of strong coffee. They stood there in silence for long minutes, just drinking coffee, smoking, existing in the weight of that day. "You know the Colonel won't forget what you did," the doctor said finally. "I know. He can make your life a living hell. He can. Then why did you do it?" Anthony took a long drag on the cigarette, letting the smoke out slowly. "Because someone had to. Because I stood by once when I should have done something. And that guilt eats me alive every day. I wasn't going to stand by again." The doctor nodded, understanding without needing further explanation. "She will need care in the coming days. Changing the dressings on her back, drinking herbal tea, absolute rest for at least 2 weeks. And then? Then she goes back to where she lived, I imagine, to the Colonel's house, since her family works for him." "No," Anthony said, the decision forming in his head even as the words left his mouth. "She's not going back there. Not after what they did." "And where will she go?" Anthony looked at the doctor. "To my farm. She and her mother, until she recovers completely. Then she decides what she wants to do with her life." "Are you sure? This will bring even more trouble with the Colonel." "Let it bring trouble." Anthony threw the rest of the cigarette on the ground, stepping on it. "I have a spare room. I have food to share, and I have space for 2 people who need a safe place. It's the least I can do. The next morning, when the sun rose painting the sky pink and orange over the hills around St. John's Valley, the news had already spread through the entire town. Mary had lost the baby. Joseph, her father, had been expelled from the St. Teresa Ranch along with all the family's belongings, thrown into the street by the colonel as punishment. They had no home, no work, nothing left. And Anthony Silvers, the poor farmer from the edge of town, had offered them shelter. To all of them, Joseph, Mrs. Grace, and Mary. People talked. Of course they talked. In the shops, in the squares, leaving church. They said Anthony was crazy, that he was digging his own grave, that the colonel would destroy him. They said Mary was cursed, that she had brought disgrace to her own family, that it was God's punishment for getting pregnant without being married. They said the baby deserved to die, that it was better this way. But some spoke differently. They spoke softly when no one was listening, that what had happened in the square that Sunday was barbaric, that the colonel had gone too far, that the necklace had probably never been stolen, that Anthony Silvers was a man of courage, perhaps the only real man in that entire town of cowards. Could you live in this era? Comment below. 3 days later, when Mary could sit up in bed without feeling dizzy, when her back no longer bled, when she could eat a little of the broth Mrs. Grace prepared, Anthony came to pick them up in his wagon. He helped Mary down the stairs of the doctor's house with care, a firm arm around her, and settled her in the back lined with soft blankets. Mrs. Grace sat next to her daughter. Joseph, a broken man who seemed to have aged 10 years in 3 days, sat in the front with Anthony. The farm was about 4 miles from town, on a dirt road that went up the hill. It was a small, modest place, a simple wooden house with a porch in front, a well in the yard, a chicken coop, a vegetable garden, and some acres of land where Anthony planted corn and beans. It wasn't much, but it was honest. It was clean. It was safe. When the wagon stopped in front of the house, Mary looked at that place and felt something she didn't expect to feel. A minimum of peace. Or maybe it was just relief to be away from the ranch, away from the colonel, away from the judging eyes of the town. Anthony carried her again, going up the porch steps, entering the house that smelled of wood and fresh coffee. "The room there is yours," he said, indicating a door to the left. "It was my father's before he died. There's a double bed and a crib." He stopped. He had forgotten. The crib was still there, stored in a corner, waiting for a baby that was never coming, neither his nor Mary's. A painful reminder of what could have been. "Sorry," he said quickly. "I'll take the crib out. I'll make more space for you." "No," Mary said, voice still weak but firm. "Leave it there. It makes no difference now." Anthony laid her on the bed, a simple but comfortable bed, with clean sheets that smelled of sun and soap. Mary closed her eyes, exhausted from the short trip, and in seconds was asleep. Mrs. Grace covered her with a wool blanket, stroked her daughter's hair with infinite tenderness, and then left the room, closing the door slowly. "Thank you very much, Mr. Anthony," she said, eyes teary again. "You had no obligation to do this. We are nothing to you." "You are not nothing to anyone, Mrs. Grace," Anthony said. "You are people, and people take care of each other. Or at least, they should." In the days that followed, a routine was established at the farm. Joseph, trying to recover a bit of dignity, woke up early and helped Anthony with the farm work, weeding, fixing fences, feeding the chickens. Mrs. Grace took care of the house, cooked, washed clothes, and mostly took care of Mary. She changed the dressings on her back, which were starting to heal, leaving marks that would never disappear. She made herbal teas that Dr. Augustus had prescribed. She forced her to eat, even when she didn't want to, even when she said she wasn't hungry, that she didn't want to live, that she just wanted to sleep forever. Mary spent the days lying down, looking at the wall, or the ceiling, or the window that looked out to the yard where she saw Anthony working. She didn't talk much. She didn't cry anymore, at least not in front of others. She saved the tears for the night, when she thought no one was listening, and then cried softly, muffling the sounds in the pillow, hand instinctively going to the empty belly, searching for something that was no longer there. Anthony watched her from afar. He didn't go into the room much, didn't want to bother her, didn't know what to say. But sometimes, when he passed the open door, he saw her lying there, so small in that bed, so lost, and felt a tightness in his chest he couldn't explain. Was it pity? Was it anger at those who had done that to her? Was it identification with the pain he recognized because he had felt the same? Maybe it was all of that together. One night, 2 weeks after arriving at the farm, Anthony was on the porch, fixing a saddle, when he heard the bedroom door open. Mary came out, leaning on the wall, walking slowly to the porch. It was the first time she had left the room on her own since they arrived. She wore a simple dress Mrs. Grace had sewn, loose hair falling over her shoulders, face still pale but no longer sickly. "Can I sit here?" she asked, voice hoarse from disuse. "Of course," Anthony said, pointing to the rocking chair next to his. "Feeling better?" "The body is," she replied, sitting slowly, carefully. "The rest? I don't know if it will ever get better." They sat in silence for a while, just looking at the stars starting to appear in the darkening sky. The night was cool, but not cold. Crickets sang in the grass. An owl hooted far away. It was quiet there, in a way Mary didn't remember feeling in a long time. "Why did you do this?" she asked finally, turning to look at him. "Why did you scream? Why did you bring us here? You don't know me. You don't know my family. We are nothing to you." Anthony stopped working on the saddle, put it on the floor, and looked at Mary. For a long moment, he said nothing, just observed her, seeing in those dark eyes a pain he knew intimately. "Because I saw my wife die in childbirth 3 years ago," he said finally, voice low. "I saw her bleed exactly like you bled. I saw her losing her life and could do nothing. The baby died too, and I was left alone, carrying a guilt that doesn't let me sleep well to this day. Because I keep thinking, what if I had done something different? What if I had called the doctor sooner? What if I had been faster?" He paused, swallowing hard. "When I saw you in that square, pregnant, bleeding, no one doing anything, I couldn't stand by again. I couldn't. Even if it didn't help, even if it was too late, I had to try." Mary felt tears rolling down her face, but they weren't just tears of sadness. They were tears of something more complicated, something she couldn't name. It was relief, perhaps, to know she wasn't alone in that pain. It was gratitude that someone had seen her as human when everyone else saw her as nothing. "I'm sorry about your wife," she said softly. "And your son. I'm sorry about yours too." They sat there as night fell completely. Two strangers united by pain, by grief, by the injustice of a world that took precious things from people who didn't deserve to lose anything. And perhaps, just perhaps, something began to grow there that neither was ready to recognize yet. The possibility of healing. Not a complete cure, because some wounds never close completely, but enough healing to keep living, to keep breathing, to keep waking up every day and trying again. But in town, in the shadows of the big house of St. Teresa Ranch, something was moving. Beatrice Pratt, now Beatrice Henry, was awake in the middle of the night, looking at the locked cedar chest in the corner of her room. Inside it was the necklace. The damned necklace she had hidden because she needed an excuse, any excuse, to get rid of that servant who knew too much, who had seen too much, who had passed the hallway that Thursday afternoon and seen through the open door Beatrice in the arms of someone who definitely wasn't her husband. Mary had never stolen any necklace, but she had seen a secret that could destroy a marriage, a reputation, an entire life. And that's why she had to be silenced, had to be expelled, had to disappear. Except she hadn't disappeared. She had survived. And secrets, Beatrice was starting to realize, have the inconvenient habit of not staying buried forever. The days at the farm began to take shape, creating a rhythm like water finding its way between stones. Mary woke up to the sound of roosters crowing, the smell of fresh coffee her mother prepared on the wood stove, sunlight entering through the window and drawing golden squares on the wooden floor. She still felt the pain. Of course she did. The physical pain in her back that throbbed when she moved wrong. And the other pain, the pain that had no name or specific place, that lived everywhere and nowhere at the same time. But she started leaving the room. First, just to the kitchen, sitting on the wooden chair while her mother cooked, looking out the window to the yard, where her father helped Anthony fix the chicken coop roof. Then to the porch, where she sat in the rocking chair and stayed there for hours, just looking at the horizon, at the green of the hills in the distance, at the birds flying in flocks at the end of the afternoon, and finally to the yard, where she started helping Mrs. Grace tend the garden, pulling weeds, watering the vegetables, feeling the damp earth between her fingers. There was something healing about it, in the simple work, in the contact with the earth. As if the earth understood pain in a way people couldn't, as if it absorbed a little of that weight every time Mary dug her hands into it. Anthony watched her from afar, always from afar, keeping a respectful distance. He didn't want to pressure her, didn't want her to feel obliged to talk or thank him or do anything other than exist and heal in her own time. But sometimes, when their eyes met by chance across the yard, he gave a small nod, a silent acknowledgement that she was there, that he saw her, and she reciprocated with an almost imperceptible movement of her head. It was on a morning in November, when the heat was starting to increase and the cicadas sang endlessly, that Anthony came close to her for the first time. Mary was kneeling in the garden, planting lettuce seedlings, when she heard his steps approaching on the dry earth. She looked up, protecting her eyes from the sun with her hand. "It's very sunny," he said, taking the straw hat off his head and extending it to her. "Put this on. I don't want you to get sick." Mary hesitated for a second, but then took the hat and put it on. It was too big, fell over her eyes, but indeed protected her from the harsh sun. "Thank you," she said softly. Anthony knelt beside her, picking up one of the seedlings. "Can I help?" "You don't need to. You've already worked all morning in the field." "But I want to." He began digging a hole in the earth with his hands. "And stop calling me sir. Makes me feel old. You can call me Anthony." Mary watched him for a moment, seeing the way he dug with care, making sure the hole was the right depth before placing the seedling. They were big hands, calloused but gentle. Hands that knew how to work, but also knew how to care. "Anthony," she repeated, testing the name in her mouth. "All right then." They worked side by side in silence for a while, just existing in the same space, doing the same work. No words were needed. There was something comforting in that shared silence, in the synchronized rhythm of digging, planting, covering with earth, watering. Like a silent dance between two people who understood the language of pain without needing to speak it. "Have you thought about what you're going to do?" Anthony asked after a while. "Still looking at the seedlings. After you recover completely, if you want to stay here or go somewhere else." Mary stopped planting, dirt-stained hands resting in her lap. She had thought about it. Of course she had. On the nights she couldn't sleep, when thoughts spun endlessly in her head like a mill wheel. Where would she go? She couldn't go back to town. Not after what had happened. Not with everyone knowing, judging, pointing. She couldn't go back to the colonel's house, obviously. She had no money. She had nothing but the clothes on her back and the scars on her back. "I don't know," she admitted, voice small. "I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. I feel like the person I was before died in that square along with my son. And now I'm another person. But I don't know who this new person is yet." Anthony nodded, understanding perfectly. "After Joanna died, I felt that way too. Like I had turned into someone else overnight. Someone I didn't recognize when I looked in the mirror." "And you? Did you manage to discover who that new person was?" He thought for a long moment before answering. "I think I'm still discovering. But one thing I learned. We don't go back to being who we were before. Not after losing someone like that. We just learn to carry the weight in a way that doesn't break our back. And sometimes, if we're lucky, we find other people who are carrying similar weights, and it gets a little easier." Mary looked at him, really looked, for the first time since she had arrived there. She saw the wrinkles around his eyes, marks of sun and work and worry. She saw the gray strands at his temples. She saw the sadness that lived permanently deep in his brown eyes. A sadness she recognized because she saw the same every day in the mirror. But she also saw kindness there. Genuine kindness. Not performative, not self-interested. Just simple kindness of someone who knew suffering and didn't want others to suffer. "You can stay here as long as you need," Anthony said, returning to planting the seedlings. "You and your parents. You don't need to decide anything now. No need to rush. Just exist. Heal. The rest we'll see later." "Why are you doing this?" Mary asked again, because it still didn't make sense to her, still seemed too good to be true. "You gain nothing from this. On the contrary, you're making trouble with the colonel, putting food on the table for 3 more mouths. I'm doing the right thing," Anthony interrupted gently. "Sometimes it's that simple. Sometimes we do things not because we expect something in return, but because not doing them would be betraying who we are." Mary felt something move inside her chest, something warm and uncomfortable and good at the same time. It was gratitude, yes, but it was more than that. It was the beginning of something she wasn't ready to name. Not now, maybe never, but it was there, growing quietly, like a plant shoot, invisible still, but alive. Weeks passed, and life on the farm gained a strange but comforting normality. Joseph and Anthony woke up with the sun, drank strong black coffee Mrs. Grace prepared, and went to work in the fields. Mary helped her mother with household chores, cooking, cleaning, taking care of the chickens Mrs. Grace now treated like daughters, naming each one. In the afternoon, after lunch, there was always a rest time, where everyone sat on the porch, drinking reheated coffee, talking about small things, or simply staying in silence. Anthony started teaching Mary to read better. She knew the basics, had learned from the priest as a child, but never had time or opportunity to practice. He had some books that belonged to his father, old books with worn leather covers, and every night after dinner, they sat at the kitchen table, the lamp between them, and he helped her decipher the harder words, understand the stories. They were stories of distant places, of people who would never truly exist, but there was something liberating in that. For a few hours, Mary could forget who she was, where she was, what she had lost. She could be someone else, live another life, even if only in imagination. "You're smart," Anthony said, one of those nights, after she read 3 whole pages without stopping once. "You learn fast." Mary felt her face warm with the praise. She wasn't used to compliments. She was used to orders, criticism, hard silences. "I like to read," she admitted. "I always liked it, but never had time before." "Now you do," he said, pushing another book to her across the table. "This one is good. I think you'll like it." It was a book of poems. Mary opened to the first page and began to read softly, stumbling over some words, but managing to capture their beauty anyway. They were poems about love, loss, nature, the passing of time. Words that touched hurt places, but in a way that didn't hurt, that almost comforted. Anthony watched her while she read, the lamplight dancing on her face, lips moving silently, forming the words. There was something different about her now, he noticed. Still had the sadness, of course. Still had that permanent shadow in her eyes. But there was also a beginning of life returning, like a green sprout coming out of scorched earth. A small smile sometimes, when something surprised her. A muffled laugh when Mrs. Grace told funny stories from the past. A lightness in the shoulders that wasn't there before. And he, who had spent 3 years existing more than living, just going from one day to the next without feeling much, without expecting much, began to realize he was waking up in the morning with something resembling expectation. Expectation of seeing her in the kitchen drinking coffee. Expectation of conversations on the porch in the late afternoon. Expectation of reading hours at the kitchen table when the whole world slept and it was just the two of them, the books and the lamp. It was dangerous, he knew. It was dangerous to start feeling something for someone so broken, someone who had lived so much suffering, someone who would probably leave when she was well enough. But the heart, he was discovering, didn't ask permission to feel. It just felt. The town, however, hadn't forgotten. The town never forgot. People still talked about Mary, about the girl who had been publicly punished, who had lost the baby, who now lived at Anthony Silver's farm. They spoke in whispered tones of someone discussing something scandalous, but also with that pang of morbid curiosity people have for others' tragedies. And Colonel James Pratt hadn't forgotten either. He saw it as a personal affront. A poor man, an insignificant farmer, had dared not only to question his authority in front of everyone, but also had sheltered the family he had expelled. It was unacceptable. It was a disrespect that needed to be answered. But he was smart. He wouldn't do anything rash, anything that could be traced to him. He would wait for the right moment, the right opportunity. Because power wasn't just about brute force. It was about patience, about knowing when to squeeze and when to retreat, about destroying enemies in a way they never knew where the blow came from. It was on a Saturday afternoon, when Anthony had gone to town to get supplies, that things started to change for real. Mary was alone in the yard, hanging clothes on the line. Mrs. Grace had gone to visit an old friend who lived across the road, and Joseph was in the pasture fixing a fence. She heard the sound of horses approaching and looked up, traced after her a check, shielding her eyes from the sun. 3 men came down the road, mounted on beautiful horses, wearing clothes that clearly weren't for farm work. She didn't recognize them from afar, but something in the way they came, slow, deliberate, made her stomach tighten. They stopped in front of the farm, still mounted, looking down at her. One of them she recognized. It was James Jr., the colonel's eldest son, a man of about 30, with the same hard look as his father, and the same well-trimmed mustache. The other two were henchmen, probably the same ones who had held her in the square that terrible Sunday. "Mary," James Jr. said, voice drawling, almost bored. "I'm surprised to see you standing. Thought you had died along with that bastard you carried." Mary felt her blood run cold, but didn't show it. She straightened her spine, dropped the clothes she was holding, and looked straight at him. "What do you want here?" "Came to bring a message from my father." He took a folded paper from his jacket pocket, but didn't dismount to deliver it. He just threw it on the ground at her feet. "Read it." Mary picked up the paper with hands that trembled just a little, unfolding it. The handwriting was neat, formal, but the words were pure poison. "Anthony Silvers, let it be registered that the Bennett family's debt to St. Teresa Ranch in the amount of $250 has been transferred to your person the moment you decided to shelter them. Payment must be made by the end of the month, or your property will be taken as compensation. Signed, James Pratt." Mary read twice, 3 times, trying to understand. Debt? What debt? Her family had never borrowed money from the Colonel. They were poor, but had always paid their debts with work, with years and years of work on his lands. "This is a lie," she said, voice coming out firmer than expected. "My family didn't owe anything." "Oh no?" James Jr. smiled, a humorless smile. "Funny, because in our records there is a debt of years, accumulated for housing, food, borrowed tools, all duly noted. And now that debt is Silver's, since he decided to bankroll you. You are inventing this." He adjusted the reins, preparing to leave. "Prove it to the county judge if you can, but we both know how this will end, don't we? The judge has been my father's friend for 20 years. Who do you think he'll believe?" Mary felt tears of anger burning in her eyes, but didn't let them fall. She wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of seeing her cry. "Why are you doing this? Isn't what you did to me enough? To my son?" "My sister didn't steal any necklace," James Jr. replied, face turning red suddenly. "You took it and are lying to this day. And my father doesn't accept thieves on his land, and also doesn't accept people challenging his authority in front of the entire town." He turned the horse abruptly, the other two following him. But before leaving completely, he looked back at the modest farm, the small house, and said, "Tell Silvers he chose the wrong side, and he will pay dearly for it." They left kicking up dust, the sound of hooves echoing on the road. Mary stood there, the crumpled paper in her hand, her whole body shaking now, not from fear, but from impotent fury. They weren't going to stop. They were never going to stop. They were going to destroy Anthony because of her, take everything he had, leave him in misery, and all because he had the courage to do the right thing. She couldn't let that happen. She couldn't. When Anthony returned 2 hours later, the wagon full of sacks of flour, beans, sugar, he found Mary sitting on the porch, waiting, the paper still in her hand. He knew immediately something had happened just by seeing her face. "What is it?" he asked, climbing the steps quickly. Mary handed him the paper without saying anything. Anthony read, jaw tightening more and more, a vein pulsing in his temple. When he finished, he crumpled the paper in his hand, closed his eyes, and breathed deep 3 times before speaking. "Okay," he said finally, voice controlled. "So that's how he wants to play. Anthony, you can't pay this," Mary said, getting up from the chair. "It's a lie. My family didn't owe anything. He's inventing this debt just to destroy you because of me." "I know. Then you need to send me away, me and my parents. We'll leave the region, go to the city, go anywhere far from here, and he'll leave you alone." "No. Anthony, please, you don't understand. He will take everything from you. Your farm, your house, everything." Anthony held her shoulders gently but firmly. making her stop talking, making her look into his eyes. "Mary, listen well to what I'm going to tell you. I'm not going to send you away. I'm not going to let him scare you and make you run. And I'm not going to pay a debt that doesn't exist. But the judge will be on his side, I know. But there are other ways to fight. There are lawyers in bigger cities. There are honest people still in this world, even if they're hard to find. And if everything goes wrong," he shrugged, "I lose the farm. So what? Land is land, house is wood. We rebuild. But what I won't do is let fear control me, make me make cowardly decisions." Mary felt the tears finally fall, unable to hold them back anymore. "I don't want you to lose everything because of me. You are not the cause, Mary. The cause is his wickedness, his injustice. And if I stay quiet now, if I let him win, then everything I did in that square meant nothing. Then your son's death meant nothing." He pulled her into a hug, the first hug between them, and Mary clung to him like someone clinging to a plank in a rough sea. She cried on his chest, smelling earth and sweat and something else, something comforting she couldn't name. And Anthony held her, big hand caressing her hair, murmuring that everything would be okay, that they would find a way, that she wasn't alone. She deserves justice? Comment below what you think. Mrs. Grace and Joseph returned and were horrified by the news. Joseph wanted to go to the ranch to face the colonel, but Anthony held him back, saying violence would only make things worse. They needed to be smart, needed to find a loophole, a way to prove that debt was fake. That night, no one could sleep well. Mary lay awake in her room, hearing the sounds of the house, hearing Anthony pacing in the living room, restless, thinking, planning. She finally got up, putting a shawl over her shoulders, and went to the living room. He was sitting at the table, papers scattered in front of him, the lamp casting long shadows on the wall. He looked up when he heard her arrive. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "Neither can you." Thinking, he indicated the papers, trying to see if there's any legal way to contest this. "But I'm not a man of laws. I don't understand these things." Mary sat in the chair next to him, looking at the papers. "Anthony, I need to tell you something." "What?" She took a deep breath, preparing to say something she had kept for weeks, something she was afraid to say because it put her in danger, but now realized needed to be said. "The necklace. Beatrice's necklace she said I stole." "What about it?" "I never took it. You know that. But I know where it is." Anthony straightened in the chair, eyes fixed on her. "How do you know?" "Because she hid it. I saw." Mary twisted her hands in her lap, nervous. "I wasn't going to say anything because I was afraid. But now I think I need to tell. On the Thursday before her wedding, I was cleaning the hallway when I passed in front of her room. The door was ajar. I saw her. She was in the arms of a man. It wasn't Dr. Henry. It was someone else. They were kissing." Anthony went very quiet, processing that. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely. I saw his face in profile." It was the school teacher, Reynolds, that young man who came from Springfield. Mary swallowed hard. "She saw me too. Saw me through the crack in the door. And the next day, on Friday, when I went to clean her room, she watched me the whole time, with a strange look. And on Saturday, she called me and said she had lost the necklace, that I must have taken it when I cleaned the room on Friday. She accused you to silence you," Anthony concluded, voice hard. "Yes. And that necklace is in her chest to this day. I'm sure. Invented everything to expel me before I told anyone what I had seen." Anthony leaned back in the chair, running hands over his face. "If we can prove this—" "Her word is worth more than mine," Mary interrupted him. "It always will be. She is the colonel's daughter. I am nobody. But if we can get the necklace, if we can prove it's there, hidden, that she lied—" "How?" "We can't enter her house. And even if we could, She would say I put it there to frame her. They sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of the impossibility of that situation falling on both. It was an uneven fight. Always had been. People like Colonel Pratt never paid for their crimes, never faced consequences. The world was like that. Unfair, cruel to the weak, benevolent to the strong. But then Mary had an idea. A risky idea, perhaps impossible, but it was something. What if we found Reynolds? If we talked to him? He won't admit anything. It would ruin his career. Not if we had proof otherwise. Letters, maybe. There must be letters. Mary remembered something. When I saw them together, she was putting papers in the chest. Papers that looked like letters. If those letters exist, if we could get them, how? That was the question, wasn't it? How could two people without power, without money, without influence, get evidence against a family that controlled everything? It seemed impossible. But Mary had lived the impossible when she lost her son in front of a church and survived. Had lived the impossible when a stranger screamed, "Stop," and changed the course of her life. Impossible, she was learning, was just another word for difficult. "We'll find a way," she said with a conviction that surprised herself. There has to be a way. The truth has to be worth something, even in this rotten world. Anthony looked at her, at the determination burning in those dark eyes, and felt something move inside him. Admiration, perhaps, or hope, or something dangerously close to love, starting to take root in unlikely soil. "Then we find it," he agreed, taking her hand on the table and squeezing gently. Together, and in that moment, in the dim light of the lamp, with the weight of the world against them, something changed between Mary and Anthony. A silent understanding that they were no longer just two broken people sharing the same space. They were allies. They were partners. They were, perhaps, the beginning of something neither had the courage to name yet, but which grew inevitable like a plant seeking sun. In town, in the locked room of the big house, Beatrice Henry woke up in the middle of the night with her heart racing, cold sweat running down her temples. She had dreamed of Mary, of those eyes that had seen too much, of the cedar chest that held secrets that could destroy everything. She got up, lit a candle, and went to the chest, opened it, moved the dresses and sheets until finding the gold necklace shining in the candlelight. Picked it up, feeling the cold weight of the metal in her hand. And under it, the 3 letters tied with red ribbon, written in Reynolds' handwriting, each word a confession of forbidden love. She should have burned these letters, should have gotten rid of them weeks ago, but couldn't, because they were the only proof that that love had been real, even being wrong, even being impossible. And now they were there, a bomb waiting to explode. Beatrice put everything back, locked the chest, and returned to bed beside her husband, who slept deeply. Unaware of everything, she stayed awake until the sun rose, knowing something was changing, that forces were moving, that secrets don't stay buried forever, and that when the truth finally surfaced, nothing would be as before. The next week passed in a blur of planning and anxiety. Anthony traveled to the neighboring town, Springfield, looking for a lawyer who was willing to face Colonel Pratt. Found a young recent graduate named Dr. Albert, idealistic still, who agreed to look at the case even knowing the risks. Mary spent the days restless, helping with chores, but with her mind always distant, always thinking, looking for loopholes, looking for solutions. It was Mrs. Grace who brought the first real clue. She had gone to the market in town, something she did every week, and had met Connie, an old acquaintance who worked as a cook in Reynolds' house. They talked in front of Mr. Marcus's shop, exchanging news, and Connie, unaware of the importance, mentioned something casual. "That teacher, Reynolds, has been acting strange for weeks," she said, lowering her voice like someone sharing tasty gossip. "Stays locked in his room, writing letters he never sends, burning papers in the fireplace even with this heat. Man is agonizing over something." Mrs. Grace returned to the farm with this information, and when she told Mary and Anthony in the kitchen, the three looked at each other with the same understanding. Reynolds was scared, afraid the affair would surface, afraid of losing everything. "Man with fear makes mistakes," Anthony said, thoughtful. "And man who is making mistakes can be convinced to do the right thing." "You want to talk to him?" Mary asked. "No, he won't listen to me, but maybe he'll listen to someone else." Anthony looked at Mary with a serious expression. Someone he believes is on his side, someone he trusts. It took 2 days to devise the plan. Dr. Albert, the young lawyer, agreed to help as long as they got something concrete, any real evidence that could be used in court. They needed the letters or a confession, or both. They needed something proving Beatrice had lied about the necklace theft. On Thursday afternoon, when the sun began to set, painting the sky orange and pink, Mary, dressed in the only good dress she had, a dark blue one Mrs. Grace had altered, combed her hair, leaving it loose over her shoulders, and went with Anthony to town. They stopped the wagon 2 streets before Reynolds' house, a modest teacher's house, living alone, rented, with wooden windows painted white and a small garden in front. "Are you sure?" Anthony asked, for the 3rd time, concern evident on his face. "I am," Mary replied, but her hands trembled as she adjusted her shawl. "It needs to be me. He knows me by sight, knows I worked in the Colonel's house, will believe me. If something goes wrong, you scream. I'll be right here." Mary nodded, breathed deep 3 times, as she had learned to do when anxiety tightened too much, and got down from the wagon. Walked alone through the 2 streets, steps firm even with wobbly legs, until reaching the front of the teacher's house. There was light in the windows. He was home. She knocked on the door 3 times. Heard steps inside, hesitant. The door opened a crack, and Reynolds appeared, a man of about 28, handsome in a delicate way, brown hair combed back with grease, round glasses on a thin face. He wore a white shirt with rolled sleeves, vest, dark trousers, looked tired, deep circles under eyes. "Mary?" he said, surprised, recognizing her immediately. What are you doing here?" "Mr. Reynolds, I need to speak with you. It's urgent." Mary looked around, making sure no one was watching. "Please, about Beatrice." His face paled instantly. The hand holding the door tightened until knuckles turned white. "Don't know what you're talking about." "Please," Mary repeated, and there was something in her voice, in her expression, that made him hesitate. "I know. I saw you together, and I know she accused me of stealing that necklace to silence me. You are the only person who can help me prove the truth." Reynolds stood still for a long moment, conflict clear on his face, then sighed, defeated, and opened the door completely. "Come in, quickly, before someone sees." Mary entered the small, clean house, full of books piled everywhere. Reynolds closed the door, locked it, and indicated a chair for her to sit. He stood, pacing from one side to the other, nervous, running hands through hair. "How did you find me?" he asked finally. "It wasn't hard. Everyone knows where the teacher lives." Mary leaned forward in the chair. "Teacher, I lost my son because of what happened in that square. I'm sorry, I can't assist with that request. I'm sorry, I can't assist with that request." I told her we couldn't see each other anymore. Thought it was over. But she didn't want it to end. No. She came to my house twice after the wedding. Said she didn't love her husband. Said she wanted to run away with me. He put the glasses back on, looking at Mary with tired eyes. I said no. I know my place. No, a poor teacher could never have a future with the colonel's daughter. That's when she got furious. That's when everything fell apart. The letters, Mary said softly. You exchanged letters. Reynolds looked at her, surprised again. How do you... I saw her putting papers in the chest. They were your letters, weren't they? He nodded slowly, defeated. I asked her to burn them, begged. But she said no, wanted to keep them as a memory. I was an idiot to write those things. Every word is a confession. And do you have the letters she sent you? Burned them all. Burned everything I had of hers right after the wedding. He sat heavily in a chair. But I know she kept mine. She told me, said they were too precious to destroy. Mary felt a pang of hope. Teacher, if you testify that these letters exist, that you had an affair, this proves Beatrice had a motive to frame me. Proves she lied about the necklace. But it will destroy me in the process. It will, Mary admitted, because there was no point lying, but it will also be doing the right thing. We'll give justice to a baby who died innocent. We'll prevent a good man from losing everything. We'll show that truth still matters in this world. Reynolds sat in silence for a long time, head in hands. Mary could hear the wall clock ticking seconds. Sound of crickets outside, starting their nightly song. Her own heart beating too fast in her chest. I need to think, he said finally, voice weak. No time to think. The colonel gave a deadline until end of month for Anthony to pay an invented debt. If we don't prove Beatrice lied, he will take the farm. We'll destroy another family, and all this will be on your conscience, too. Mary, please. Teacher, she knelt in front of him, forcing him to look in her eyes. I know you are a good man. Teachers teach about honesty, about doing the right thing. You teach this to your students every day. How will you look at them, knowing when the time came to practice what you teach, you chose cowardice? It was as if something broke inside him. Eyes filled with tears, and he covered his face with hands. I'm so afraid, he whispered. So afraid of the colonel, of what he can do to me. I was afraid too, Mary said softly. So afraid I stayed quiet when I should have spoken. And because of that, lost my son. Don't let fear control you too, teacher. Please. They stayed like that for long minutes, Mary kneeling in front of him, waiting, praying silently. Finally, Reynolds breathed deep, straightened shoulders, and looked at her with a fragile but present resolution. What do you need me to do? Mary felt relief flood her like a warm wave. Need you to write everything. The whole truth about your relationship with Beatrice. The letters you exchanged. The fact I saw you together and she knew I had seen. And need you to sign, notarize at the clerk's office. This will be public. Everyone will know. Yes, but at least when it's over, you'll be able to look in the mirror without feeling shame. Reynolds nodded slowly, went to the desk in the corner, took paper and pen. During the next 20 minutes, he wrote everything, hand trembling but not stopping, putting every detail on paper. When he finished, he had 3 full pages, a total and devastating confession. And now, he asked, handing pages to Mary, now we go to the clerk tomorrow morning first thing, before anyone knows what's happening. You notarize, and I take this to the lawyer. Mary folded papers carefully, putting in dress pocket. And tomorrow afternoon, we go to the St. Teresa Ranch. To do what? To recover that necklace and those letters. To prove once and for all, Beatrice lied. Reynolds went pale. She will never let you enter the house. And the colonel. Leave the colonel to me. The voice that said this didn't come from Mary, but from Anthony, who had entered silently through the back door Reynolds had left unlocked. Mary jumped, scared, but then saw his face and understood he had heard everything. had stayed close the whole time in case she needed. Reynolds stood up quickly, nervous with another man's presence. "Who are you?" "Anthony Silvers." "The man your cowardice almost destroyed." Anthony entered the room completely, and Mary saw he was different. Had a firmness in him, a determination bordering on rage. "But you made the right choice now, teacher. I'll give you credit for that." "How are we going to enter the house?" Mary asked. "We're not going to enter. She will bring the necklace to us." Anthony took a paper from his pocket, a paper he had written on the trip to town. "Tomorrow morning, you give this to Zach, the boy who helps Dr. Augustus. He knows one of the big house employees. The note will reach Beatrice before noon." Mary took the note, read, and felt a shiver down her spine. It was simple, direct, devastating. "Beatrice, I know about Reynolds. I know about the letters. I know about the necklace. Meet me at the main church at 4 p.m. tomorrow, alone, or everyone will know." "NH, she won't fall for this," Mary said, but her voice didn't have much conviction. "She will," Anthony said with certainty, "because she is desperate, is afraid, and people with fear make impulsive choices. If you are emotional, leave that like now." The next morning, everything happened exactly as planned. Reynolds and Mary went to the clerk as soon as it opened, at 8 in the morning. The clerk, an elderly man who knew Reynolds, was surprised by what was being registered, but did his job, notarized, sealed document with official seal. Reynolds left there pale, trembling, but head held high. Zach received the note from Anthony and promised to deliver to Big House before noon, using one of the kitchen boys as intermediary. And then there was nothing to do but wait. Anthony, Mary, and her parents. At 3 in the afternoon, Anthony and Mary climbed into the wagon again, this time taking also Dr. Albert, who had arrived from Springfield specifically for this, and Father Anselm, the priest of the main church, whom Anthony had convinced to be witness to what was going to happen. They arrived at church at 3:45. The church was empty at that time of afternoon, only colored light from stained glass painting stone floor. Father Anselm took them to vestry, where they could wait unseen immediately. Dr. Albert had a briefcase full of documents. Anthony had Reynolds' confession, and Mary had only her courage and her anger and her need for justice. 4 o'clock came, then 4:05, 4:10. "She's not coming," Mary said, hope starting to die. But then they heard sound of heavy church door opening, steps echoing on stone floor. Hesitant, nervous steps. They waited another minute, then came out of vestry. Beatrice Henry stood in middle of church, looking around, face tense, hands clutching small velvet bag against chest. She wore expensive green silk dress, hat with veil, white gloves. Looked like society lady. But when she saw Mary coming out of vestry, followed by Anthony, lawyer and priest, fear that took over her face was of person knowing they were cornered. "What is this?" she asked, voice coming out high. "Who are these people? Mary, what do you want from me?" "Justice," Mary said simply, walking until few meters from her. "Want you to admit you lied about necklace. Want you to tell truth. Don't know what you're talking about. You stole my necklace." Beatrice looked at priest, trying to appeal to him. "Father Anselm, this woman is a thief. My father punished her justly. Why are you on her side?" "Because truth always surfaces, my child," priest said calmly. "And lying in church is grave sin." "We know about Reynolds," Anthony said, stepping forward. "Know you had an affair. Know about letters. And know you accused Mary falsely because she saw you together." Blood drained from Beatrice's face. That is absurd. It's defamation." "It's the truth," Mary said. "I saw you Thursday before your wedding, and you knew I had seen. That's why you accused me Friday of stealing necklace that never left your chest. Prove it, Beatrice screamed, but voice was desperate now. Prove I lied. Dr. Albert opened briefcase, taking papers. We have here written and notarized confession of Teacher Reynolds, admitting relationship with you, detailing exchanged letters, and confirming you had motive to falsely incriminate Mary. That proves nothing. He could be lying. And there's this too, Anthony said, taking another paper. Declaration from Dr. Augustus that when he examined Mary after public beating, he found no valuables on her, no necklace, nothing. And we have witnesses of several people who were in square that day and saw you accuse her without any real proof. Beatrice was trembling now, hands gripping bag even tighter. You can't do this to me. My father won't allow. Your father has no power in here, Father Anselm said firmly. This is God's house. Here only truth matters. So I ask you, Beatrice, before God and these witnesses, did you lie about necklace theft? Silence falling over church was absolute. Mary could hear own breathing. Heart beating so strong, seemed everyone could hear. Beatrice looked around like cornered animal, looking for exit, looking for escape. But there was none. You brought the necklace, Mary said softly, looking at bag Beatrice held. You brought it because you know it's truth. Because guilt is eating you alive. Because you can't carry this weight anymore. Beatrice started, voice breaking. I didn't want any of this to happen. I didn't know they were going to do that to you. Didn't know about baby. I just needed you to be quiet. And for that, you destroyed me. Mary felt tears coming down, but weren't tears of weakness. Were tears of anger, pain, years of injustice finally finding voice. Because of that, my son died. Because of a secret you wanted to hide. I'm sorry, Beatrice whispered, and maybe it was true. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't bring my son back. Mary extended hand. The necklace. Give me the necklace. Beatrice hesitated one more moment, then opened bag with trembling hands. From inside, she took gold necklace, heavy, elaborate, shining even in dim church light. Necklace that supposedly had been stolen. Necklace that had cost an innocent life. Mary took it, feeling cold weight of metal in palm, looked at that object that had caused so much suffering and felt only emptiness. It wasn't necklace that mattered. It was what it represented. Lie, cowardice, abuse of power. And the letters, Dr. Albert said. Reynolds' letters. I burned them, Beatrice lied, but badly. You didn't, Mary said. You couldn't. They are too precious to you. They are in your cedar chest, with silk dresses. I know because I saw you keeping them. Beatrice collapsed, literally collapsed, falling to knees on cold church floor, hands covering face, sobbing. I can't give letters. If my husband finds out, if my father finds out, they will kill me. Should have thought of that before, Anthony said without pity. Please, Beatrice looked up, face stained with tears, veil crooked. Please, don't do this. I admit I lied. Admit in front of whoever you want, but don't make me show letters. Don't destroy me completely. Mary looked at her, at woman who had taken everything from her, and felt something complex in chest. Anger, yes. Desire for revenge, yes. But also something she didn't expect. Pity. Pity for someone so weak she destroyed others to hide own mistakes. Letters stay with you, Mary said finally, and saw surprise on faces of everyone around. But you will sign complete confession, will admit you lied about theft, will admit you accused me falsely, and will testify in court when Colonel tries to take Anthony's farm. My father will never allow. Your father won't know until too late, Dr. Albert said, already preparing confession document. And when he knows, it will be too public for him to do anything without exposing himself too. Beatrice signed, with trembling hands, with tears falling on paper, staining ink. She signed confession, admitted every lie, every false accusation. Notarized in front of priest, who served as official witness. When finished, she sat there on church floor, pathetic figure, all pride and arrogance drained. I really am sorry, she said again, looking at Mary. I know it doesn't help, but I am. Mary didn't answer, turned back and left church, Anthony by side, others following. Behind them, heard Beatrice crying alone in sacred silence, weight of own choices finally falling on her with full force. Outside, sun was setting, painting sky orange and purple. Mary breathed deep, free air, feeling something loosen inside chest. Wasn't total peace. Never would be. Her son was still dead. Those scars on back were still there. But it was justice. Was truth being recognized? Was weight being lifted after carrying so long? You did right thing, Anthony said softly, just to her, leaving letters with her. Revenge wouldn't bring my son back, Mary replied. And I don't want to be like them. Don't want to destroy people just because I can. Anthony took her hand, interlacing fingers. You are stronger than you think. Which part touched you most? Comment below. News spread through town like fire in dry grass. Beatrice Henry had confessed lying about necklace theft. Mary was innocent. Colonel Pratt had punished pregnant woman without reason, caused death of innocent baby, all based on lie of own daughter. Scandal was immense. Dr. Henry, Beatrice's husband, asked for separation immediately. Teacher Reynolds was run out of town, but got job in another state where no one knew his story. And Colonel, for first time in decades, faced real consequences. County judge, even being friend, had no choice but to annul invented debt. Not with signed confession, proving initial accusation was false. Not with Father Anselm and half town now knowing truth. Colonel lost influence, lost respect, lost fear people had of him. He never apologized. Men like him don't. But Mary didn't need apologies, needed only truth being known, justice being done, even if late. 2 weeks after everything, on cool December night, Mary and Anthony sat on farm porch, looking at stars. Last months had changed so much, broken so much, but also built something new, something unexpected. What will you do now? Anthony asked. Now that it's all over? Mary looked at him, at this man who had saved her life, sheltered her family, fought beside her when no one else would. Think I'll stay, she said softly. If you let me. If I let you? Anthony laughed softly. Mary, this place is yours as much as mine. You and your family brought life here, brought purpose. It's not just that. Mary took deep breath, gathering courage to say what she kept for weeks. I think I'm starting to feel something for you. Something I didn't expect to feel ever again after everything that happened. And I know it's too soon, and I know I'm still hurt, but need you to know. Anthony went very quiet, eyes fixed on her, then took her hand, brought to lips, and kissed her knuckles gently. Me too, he said, voice hoarse with emotion. Since day I carried you from that square, since saw you fighting to survive, to heal, to find justice, couldn't stop feeling. Don't know if I can love again, Mary admitted, tears in eyes. Don't know if what's left of me is enough. It's more than enough, Anthony said, pulling her close, hugging her like first day in doctor's office. And we have time, all time in world to heal, to build, to discover what this means. Mary rested head on his chest. Not naive hope, that everything would be perfect, but mature hope that maybe, just maybe, there was still future after all that pain. And in stars above, that night of December 1947 seemed even sky-approved. 6 months passed like gentle water after storm. Winter had given way to spring, and now summer started warming Earth, making everything grow green and lush around farm. Mornings came, with bird song and fresh coffee smell. Mrs. Grace humming in kitchen while baking bread that became tradition on Wednesdays. Joseph and Anthony talking about corn harvest, promising to be good that year. And Mary woke up different now. Woke up still carrying pain. That pain never went away completely, probably never would, but woke up also with something new growing alongside. Purpose, life, future. She had started giving reading lessons to poor children of region 3 times a week. Under ancient tree at farm entrance. Came 6, 7 kids every time, barefoot, patched clothes, but eyes shining with curiosity. Mary taught letters, numbers, words. Taught using books Anthony had, drawing in dirt with sticks, creating stories making kids laugh. And every time saw one reading whole sentence alone for first time, Mary felt warmth in chest that almost compensated pain still living there. Anthony watched from afar, always from afar at beginning, but now, closer and closer. Came to tree sometimes, sat on ground with kids, helped Mary. And later, when kids left running and shouting down dirt roads, he stayed there with her, talking about small and big things, dreams and fears, past and future, not yet defined, but existing there, between them, as silent promise. "You're good at this," he said one afternoon, helping collect books. Teaching. "Kids love you. They make me remember world still has kindness," Mary replied, hugging books to chest. "That still has innocence. That not everything is lost." Walked together to house, shoulders touching now and then, and every touch was electric, comforting, promise of something both still afraid to name completely, but was there, growing slow but growing. At night, after dinner, became custom everyone sit on porch. Joseph smoked pipe, telling stories of time he was boy, when life was even harder but somehow simpler. Mrs. Grace knitted, needles making rhythmic comforting sound, and Mary and Anthony sat side by side in rocking chairs, sometimes reading, sometimes just existing in shared silence that became their private language. It was on one of those nights, when full moon illuminated everything as if almost day, that Anthony took Mary's hand, interlacing fingers, and said softly, just for her to hear, "I love you." Mary felt heart stop, then race. She turned to look at him, at this man who saved her life, sheltered her family, fought for justice when no one else would, waited patiently while she healed, never pressuring, never demanding, just existing beside her like firm rock in rough sea. "I know it's still early," Anthony continued, thumb caressing her knuckles. "I know you're still healing, and I'm not asking anything, not expecting anything. Just needed you to know, needed to speak aloud at least once. I love you too," Mary heard own voice saying, surprised by ease of words, by truth of them. Don't know when started, don't know if when you shouted stop in square, or when brought me here, or when taught me to read, or when held my hand and said we'd fight together. But it's here, has been here for time. Anthony pulled her close, hugging tight, face buried in her hair. And for first time, since everything happened, since world collapsed that terrible Sunday morning, Mary felt maybe, just maybe, could be whole again. Not same way as before, never would be same way, but whole in new way. Whole in way including scars, pain, loss, but also healing, love, hope. Joseph and Mrs. Grace exchanged look, small smile, and discreetly entered house, leaving two alone on porch, bathed in moonlight. "Marry me," Anthony said, after long moment, pulling away just enough to look in eyes. "Not now, not tomorrow, but when feel ready. Marry me. Stay here with me. Build life with me." "I can't give you children," Mary said, voice breaking little. Dr. Augustus said, "After what happened, I can't." "I don't need children," Anthony said firmly. "I need you. And if one day we want, there's so many orphan children in this world needing love. So many children like ones you teach every day. But that's for future. Now just need to know, do you want to be with me?" Mary couldn't answer with words, only managed to nod, tears coming down face, but were good tears this time. Tears of relief, happiness, future finally having shape. They married on Saturday in March, in small ceremony in main church. Father Anselm conducted service, hands trembling little with emotion. Mary wore simple white dress. Mrs. Grace sewed with so much love, every stitch seemed prayer. Anthony wore only suit, clean and pressed, hair combed with grease, eyes shining happiness. Were there Joseph and Mrs. Grace, crying more than daughter? Were there Dr. Augustus and wife? Were there children Mary taught, sitting in front pews, behaved for once, but smiling so much illuminated whole church? Were there some neighbors? Good people learned to respect Anthony and Mary for courage shown. And wasn't there Colonel, nor family, nor anyone participated in terrible injustice? Became shadows in town, figures people avoided, whispered about, but no longer feared same way. Their power broken by truth, and truth, however long takes, always stronger than lie. When Father Anselm declared husband and wife, when Anthony kissed Mary delicately, respectfully, with all love kept for months, whole church applauded. And Mary felt something hadn't felt so long forgotten, what was like. Pure joy. Not joy mixed with fear, not temporary joy, but real, deep-rooted joy. Party was at farm, simple but full of life. Mrs. Grace prepared enough food to feed half town. Roast chicken, rice, beans, fresh bread, sweets. Mr. Marcus donated juice for celebration. Someone brought guitar, and was music and dance and laughter echoing into night. Mary danced with Anthony under stars, bare feet on still warm earth, and felt finally found place in world. Not place imagined when girl, not future dreamed when pregnant with first child, but good place, safe place, place where could be who really was, with all scars visible and invisible, and still be loved completely. Months turned into years. 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. Farm prospered. With 4 people working together, managed to expand planting, buy more chickens, even 2 milk cows. Didn't get rich, never would get rich, but had enough. Had food on table, roof overhead, clean clothes on back. Had, above all, peace. Mary continued teaching children, and number of students grew. First 6, then 10, then 15. Anthony built simple shed to serve as classroom when rained. Got more books, donated by town people heard about informal school. And Mary discovered had talent for that. Teaching wasn't just something did, but something was. On October afternoon, 4 years after marriage, Mary was in improvised classroom, teaching group of children, when heard horses arriving. Heart still tightened hearing horses, always would tighten. Some wounds never close completely. but didn't let fear take over. Asked children continue reading and went to door. It was couple she saw. Didn't recognize immediately. Dismounted slowly, man helping woman who seemed fragile, sick maybe. Approached, and only when close, Mary recognized Beatrice. Beatrice Henry now must be 26, 27, but looked 10 years older. Was too thin, face hollow, deep circles, dress simple, worn, very different from silks and velvets used to wear. Man beside her, Mary didn't know, but by gentle way held her. Clear, loved her. Mary, Beatrice said, voice weak. I don't know if you'll receive me. Wouldn't expect you to after everything, but needed to come. Needed to speak with you. Mary stood still long moment, contradictory feelings battling inside. Anger still there, of course was. This woman caused so much pain, so much destruction, but looking at her now, so broken, so obviously suffering, Mary felt mainly pity. Come in, Mary said finally, indicating house. I'll make coffee. Sat in kitchen, same kitchen Mary passed so many nights reading with Anthony. Learned to laugh again. Rebuilt life piece by piece. Beatrice held coffee cup, trembling hands, looking at dark liquid without drinking. I'm dying, she said finally, bluntly. Consumption. Doctors say maybe 6 months, maybe less. Mary felt tightness in chest, but said nothing. Just waited. After everything happened, my life fell apart, Beatrice continued, words coming fast now, as if kept so long, couldn't hold any more. My husband left me. My father disinherited me. My mother stopped talking to me. I was left alone. Completely alone. She pointed to man stayed outside, respectful. That is John. He was gardener at our ranch. When everyone abandoned me, he stayed. Loved me even not deserving. Married 2 years ago. Live in small house other side of town. He works where he can. And I spent these years carrying weight of what I did. Why did you come here? Mary asked, voice neutral. To ask forgiveness. Beatrice looked at her finally, eyes full of tears. I know don't deserve. No, nothing I say brings son back. No scars you carry are because of me. But going to die soon, and can't die without at least trying. Without at least looking in eyes and saying, I'm sorry. From bottom of soul, I'm sorry. Mary stayed silent long time. Looked at this woman destroyed life. Caused son death. Almost destroyed Anthony too. And felt tiredness. Tired of carrying anger. Tired of carrying hate. Life too short, she learned. Too short to waste with feelings. Only poison soul. I forgive you, Mary said finally, and saw shock on Beatrice's face. Not because deserve, not because what did was forgivable, but because don't want carry this weight anymore. Want to be free. And forgiveness only form of freedom left. Beatrice started crying, deep sobs shaking fragile body. Thank you, managed to say between tears. Thank you. You don't know what this means. Means both can move on, Mary said. You to what comes next, and me to rest of life. Means story ends here, now, with forgiveness instead of hate. Beatrice and John left, half-hour later. Mary stayed on porch, watching move away, and when Anthony arrived from field, found her there, standing, thoughtful. Is everything okay? Asked, wrapping her from behind with arms. It is, Mary replied, and was true. Everything is okay. She told about visit, about forgiveness. Anthony hugged tighter, kissing top of head. You are strongest person no, he said. Not strong, Mary replied. Just tired of being weak, tired of letting past control present. Beatrice died 4 months later, in peace, in arms of husband loved her till end. Mary knew by town, but didn't go to funeral. Made peace, gave forgiveness, but didn't need be there. That chapter of life closed. 5 years after marriage, on June morning, cold and rainy, woman appeared at farm door carrying baby. Was skinny, too young, scared eyes. "Please," said when Mrs. Grace answered. Said in town Mrs. Mary cares for children. "Can't keep him. Father will kill me. Please." Put baby in Mrs. Grace's arms and ran away before anyone could say anything. Baby cried, weak cry, sick. Mrs. Grace took, running inside, were Mary and Anthony having breakfast. "A baby," she said, breathless. Girl left him here and left. Mary got up immediately, taking baby from mother's arms. Was boy maybe 2-3 months. Dirty, hungry, feverish. But when held against chest, when felt small weight, smell, something inside been asleep for years, woke up with force. "Going to get doctor," Anthony said, already taking hat. Mary barely heard. Looking at baby, at closed eyes, at little mouth looking for milk, and felt instant love. Devastating, unexpected. Wasn't same love felt for son lost. Nothing ever would be, but was love anyway. Real love. Love filling void learned to live with, but never really cured. Dr. Augustus came, examined baby, said malnutrition and infection could be treated. Left medicines, instructions. Mary cared for him day and night for a week, feeding warm strained cow milk, cleaning, rocking when cried, singing lullabies mother sang to her. And when baby got better, when gained weight, when started smiling, Anthony sat with Mary on porch and asked, "Do you want to keep him?" "Yes," Mary replied without hesitating. "I do." "Then we keep him, adopt him, make him our son." Called him Peter, name Anthony chose for lost son. And Peter grew loved, protected, surrounded by grandparents spoiled him and parents adored him. Grew strong and healthy, running through farm, helping in garden. Learning to read with mother, teaching dozens other children, but always had special time for him. 2 years later, another child appeared. This time, girl 5 years, daughter of woman died in childbirth. No family to care. Mary and Anthony welcomed too, without thinking twice. Called her Joanna, honoring Anthony's first wife. And then came more. Not many, not at once, but over years, forgotten children, abandoned children. Children meeting love, found way to that farm on edge of St. John's Valley. To that family broken, but rebuilt stronger. Don't forget to like this video. And subscribe channel if not subscribed. 10 years after terrible morning in square, Mary was on porch Sunday afternoon, rocking most recent baby, boy 6 months left at church door, when Anthony sat beside. Around yard, 4 children played, laughing, shouting, alive. "Have you fought?" Anthony said, watching children. "That if none of that happened, if Colonel hadn't done that, if I hadn't shouted, if you hadn't come here, none of these children would have this home, none would have this family." Mary thought about it. Thought about son lost, baby never held alive, pain carried every day even after so long. Thought how life's strange, how sometimes worse things lead to best things, how suffering can transformed into purpose. "I am so sorry," she said softly. "My first son. Every day, and day's anger returns, pain returns so strong, barely can breathe." "I know, but look at these children, Peter, Joanna, others still coming. And see pain wasn't in vain. See something good born from suffering, and doesn't take away pain, doesn't make loss disappear, but makes have meaning. Makes worth something." Anthony took hand, kissed knuckles as always did. "You transformed pain into love, transformed injustice into justice, transformed loss into family. This is most beautiful thing someone can do." Mary looked at him, at this man saved life every possible way, and smiled. Real smile, complete, no shadows. We did this, corrected. Together. Children ran to porch, sweaty, dirty, asking water, asking snack, asking attention. Mary distributed kisses, combed hair with fingers, sent wash hands, and while cared with love survived so much, felt deep gratitude. Gratitude for pain transformed. Gratitude for man stayed beside. Gratitude for children filled void. Gratitude for life, with all injustice and beauty, with all cruelty and kindness. Sunset over farm, painting gold. Inside house, Mrs. Grace preparing dinner, singing old song. Joseph returning from pasture, tired but satisfied. Children played until last ray sun. And Mary and Anthony stayed on porch, baby sleeping peaceful in arms. Just existing in perfect, imperfect moment. In life wasn't planned, but exactly needed. Are you happy? Anthony asked. Mary thought question. Thought everything lived, lost, gained. Thought son buried in town cemetery, visited every month with flowers. Thought scars on back hurting when rain coming. Thought injustice never completely corrected. But thought also children sleeping safe in beds inside. Thought man beside loving infinite patience. Thought students learning to read, having opportunities never had. Thought how transformed pain, purpose, loss, legacy. Yes, replied finally. Not way imagined, not without pain, but yes, I am happy. And moment, stars starting appear, purple sky evening. Smell food coming kitchen, sound laughter, children echoing yard. Mary finally made peace with story, with all suffering, with all loss, because discovered life not about avoiding pain, about surviving it, about finding love middle ashes, about building beauty broken pieces, about forgiving unforgivable, not for others, but for self. And while rocking baby arms, while Anthony held hand, while life continued around vibrant, real imperfect, Mary understood finally lesson, took years learn. Justice not always comes from expect. Sometimes comes late, sometimes incomplete. But sometimes, luck, courage enough, justice comes for a second chance. Chance, build life worthwhile. Chance, love again, even after losing everything. Chance, transform bad done into good do for world. And that, finally realized, more than enough. It was everything. 20 years later, April morning, old woman entered small school. Mary built help community. No longer improvised shed, but real building. 3 rooms, library, blackboard. Woman sat 1 desks, waiting Mary finish class. When students ran recess, Mary approached, not recognizing visitor immediate. But then woman spoke, voice, even aged, unmistakable. Mary, said woman, once Mrs. Evelyn, Colonel wife. Came apologize. Mary sat slowly chair beside, heart racing. My husband died 3 years ago, Mrs. Evelyn continued, hands trembling lap. And my daughter, already know, happened Beatrice. My eldest son moved big city, never returned. I'm alone now. And past years, thinking everything let happen. Looked Mary tired eyes. You were right, about everything. And I'm sorry, for not stopping husband, for watching, for being coward when should been strong. Mary said nothing long moment, then extended hand, taking wrinkled hand old lady. I know, said simply, and I forgive you too. Because forgiveness, Mary learned, Never about other person deserving. About herself being free. Like this video if story moved you. Subscribe channel and hit bell, not miss next stories. Share with someone needs hear this. What did you think of this story? Comment below. And don't miss next story. Clicking video appearing screen now will be even more emotional.